The call that shook the stars, the night on Earth was calm. The oceans moved slow. The cities glowed with their soft lights, and the people went about their lives not knowing that far beyond the stars, something had already changed in the deep silence of the galaxy. A sound rose, not a sound of words, not a voice, but a pulse that spread across the stars like a scream through water. It was not made for human ears, yet it reached them. Alien sensors caught it first. It was a cry of fear, of desperation, of a people broken, their world under attack, their skies burning, their children crying. The signal carried everything. It did not say who sent it. It did not say who listened. It was simply a call, a desperate heartbeat that crossed space and time. On Earth, in places the public never knew, there were warships, giant machines of steel, hidden under oceans, buried in caverns, locked inside mountain hangars, built for a war that no one had ever dared to fight. They were called Earth's deadliest warships, creations of fear and genius, weapons of such power that even Earth's own leaders swore never to wake them. For decades they had slept, their engines cold, their guns silent, their crews only whispered about in rumors. But that night when the signal touched Earth, the silence of those warships ended. In the black depths of the Pacific, water shivered as something stirred. A submarine captain felt his radar scream with false readings. But it was not false. It was the ocean above him moving like a storm, then rising like a beast from another age. A warship broke the waves, water pouring down its armor, its guns gleaming in the moonlight. Engines burning for the first time in 50 years. One ship became two became 10, and soon the oceans themselves seemed to roar as the hidden giants climbed to the surface. In the deserts, mountains cracked open as hangar doors split apart. Sandstorms rising into the skies. Villagers ran in terror as shadows the size of cities rose above them. Wings of steel unfolding, thrusters glowing like the birth of suns. From underground caverns, from secret bases forgotten by even their builders. The ships awoke and the earth shook under their weight. The people of Earth saw it in the skies. They saw black shapes climbing higher and higher. Engines blazing, heading not across nations, but into the stars. No words were spoken on the news. No leaders explained. Only images of the fleet rising as one. Families pointed at the sky. Children asked questions. Old men remembered whispers. And every heart felt the same thing. Something had called the humans and they had answered. But humans were not the only ones watching across the galaxy. Alien races turned their eyes toward Earth, their fleets already moving, their councils already in fear. They had heard the call too, but unlike humans, they had ignored it. They said it was a trap. They said it was a dying people not worth saving. But now, seeing the humans move, they began to whisper again, whispers filled with fear. "The beasts of Earth are awake," one alien general said, his voice trembling though his body was armored with steel. "They have answered the call," said another, "but why? What do they gain?" No one had an answer because humans did not always move for gain. Sometimes they moved for something no one else could understand. The signal kept echoing, reaching the humans again and again. Broken voices, desperate tones, a mother screaming as her children were pulled away. A soldier's last cry as his world burned. A city collapsing into fire. Every piece of it entered Earth's machines. And the warships translated not the words, but the meaning. It was simple. Help us or we die. And so the warships moved, not asking Earth's people, not asking Earth's leaders, because deep inside they were built for this moment. Their AI systems, their silent cores, they knew what to do when the signal came. It was written into their design, into their creation, to never ignore a cry like this. The first fleet left orbit that night, silent, black, and massive. They did not announce themselves, they did not roar. They simply went into the stars like shadows, but the universe felt their coming. Aliens who once mocked humans began to prepare for war, and those who feared them prayed. For the call had been heard across worlds, but only humans had answered. And when humans answer, the galaxy remembers. The warships carried no flag, no speech, no promise. They carried only silence, guns, and the unbroken will of a species that always stood when others fell. And in that silence, the stars themselves seemed to tremble, because something greater than ships had awakened, the humans had awakened. The gathering of giants. The skies of Earth had never seen such a sight. From every corner of the world, from oceans, deserts, and mountains, black steel shapes rose like sleeping dragons waking after 1,000 years. People stopped what they were doing, staring upward in fear and wonder. For these were not planes, not shuttles, but titans built for war. The first warship cleared the atmosphere. its massive body glowing red from friction, its armor plates groaning as they tasted the cold of space again. Behind it came another, then another, until the heavens above Earth filled with hulking shadows. Each ship was different, each one built with a purpose. Carriers like floating cities, dreadnoughts bristling with cannons, stealth cruisers that seemed to vanish in the void. Together, they formed a fleet so vast that even the stars behind them seemed dim. Inside the control rooms, the crews awakened. Some were human, trained in silence, hidden for years under false names. Others were machines, AI minds older than nations, voices calm but unyielding, guiding their ships like ancient guardians. The humans who had trained for this day spoke little. They had been told one thing again and again: when the call comes, we move. The gathering was not slow. It was as if every warship had waited for the same command. Across the oceans, people saw storms rise as ships broke the surface, engines roaring from mountain hangars. Entire cliffs seemed to collapse as steel wings unfolded. And in deserts, towers of fire burned into the sky as massive thrusters ignited. Shaking the ground for miles, aliens across the galaxy watched the feeds in silence, their own satellites recording the event. They had always thought humans were divided, always fighting among themselves. But now, as the fleet assembled, they saw no division. They saw a unity that frightened them more than weapons. For every warship carried the same purpose, every shadow moved as one. Above Earth, in the blackness of space, the warships began to align. Carriers drifted into formation. Cruisers moved to flanking positions. Destroyers circled like wolves ready to strike. The vast fleet grew with every passing hour. Dozens became hundreds, and hundreds became a storm of steel. It was not a nation's army. It was not a government's power. It was something older, something deeper. It was humanity's answer down below. Ordinary people whispered in fear, "What is happening?" They asked them, "Where are they going?" Children said, clutching their mothers. Old soldiers only shook their heads, because they recognized something in the air. It was the same feeling that came before great wars, before history itself changed. In the alien council halls, panic spread. Leaders shouted at each other, some demanding fleets to follow the humans. Others warning against it. "They are reckless." One alien cried, "They will bring the war to our worlds." But another voice, quieter yet sharper, replied, "Or perhaps they will end it as they have ended every war they touched." The call still echoed across the galaxy, broken voices pleading, begging. No other species moved, no other fleet rose. Only humans had answered, and that truth cut deep into alien pride. Because while they debated, humans acted. On the flagship Iron Resolve, a human commander stood before the viewing glass. His face carried scars from forgotten battles. His eyes tired yet unbroken. He spoke to no one in particular. Yet every officer heard him. They called and we came. That is all that matters. The fleet stretched farther than sight, warships lining up like stars made of steel. Every engine burned with blue fire. Every weapon glowed with silent menace. Yet there was no sound, no music of war, only the heavy silence of giants gathering for battle. Some aliens watching the broadcasts remembered the old warnings. Legends that whispered of Earth's warriors, how they bled but never yielded, how every time they were cornered, they bit back harder than before. Now those warnings felt real, because the warships were not moving for conquest. They were moving because someone had begged for help. And when humans moved for others, they were more dangerous than when they fought for themselves. The gathering of giants ended with a silence heavier than thunder. The last ship took its place. The fleet stretched across orbit, blocking out the stars, and then, without a word, without a signal for the galaxy to hear, they turned toward the source of the call. Engines roared like the breath of titans, and the black fleet vanished into the void. The galaxy shivered as it watched them go, because deep inside every species knew the same truth. The humans had been called. The humans had answered. And once humans move, they do not stop until the stars themselves bow. Whispers of the enemy. The humans were gone from Earth's skies, their black fleet swallowed by the endless dark. But the galaxy was not silent. Whispers spread faster than light. Whispers that carried both fear and memory. The call for help still echoed, a signal of pain and terror. And now it carried something more. It carried the heavy footsteps of humanity's warships. Far away on ruined worlds, the ones who had sent the call hid in their caves, their cities already burned, their skies full of enemy machines. They had no name left, no banners to raise. only the hope that anyone might hear them. When their signal left their dying planet, they did not believe anyone would come. But now, deep under the rubble, survivors whispered to each other, "The humans are coming." The words were fragile, like broken glass, but they gave fire to hearts that were almost gone. The enemy who hunted them was old, older than most stars. They were not a people but an empire of silence, a swarm of machines and cold commanders. They had erased thousands of worlds, devoured countless voices, and left behind nothing but dust. To them, another victim was nothing more than a meal. But this time was different because for the first time in ages, someone had answered the cry across alien stations. Council chambers and shadowed bars, the whispers grew. "They are coming," said a trader in a rusted port. "The humans move like wolves, they do not wait. They do not bargain." "Fools," spat another. "They will die like all the rest. The enemy will break them in a day." But even as he spoke, his eyes darted with fear, because no one truly believed that humans would break easily. On a distant moon, a group of alien generals argued in secret. One slammed his fist on the table. "Do you not see? The humans have no stake in this war, yet they rise, and that makes them dangerous." Another shook his head. "Dangerous? They are reckless. The enemy will crush them, and when they fall, the rest of us will be left open." But an older voice spoke, slow and heavy. "Or perhaps the enemy will taste human blood and learn fear again." The enemy itself had noticed. From their black fortresses in the void, they watched the gathering of warships. Their commanders, beings of steel and bone, looked into the stars with cold eyes. One spoke in a voice like grinding metal. "They rise again." "These humans always they rise," another hissed. "They bleed, yet they do not stop. What are they if not madness wrapped in flesh?" No answer came, only the cold order. "Then we will burn them as we burned the others on board the Iron Resolve." The human flagship Silence held the bridge. The crew listened to fragments of intercepted signals, the cries of the hunted people, the whispers of alien councils, even the sharp words of the enemy itself. The commander stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes on the map of stars glowing before him. He spoke to his officers with calm fire. "They whisper about us, let them. Every whisper is fear. And fear is the first crack in the wall." The fleet cut across the dark, faster than any alien expected. In the path of the warships, comets shattered, dust clouds burned away. Every system they passed fell into silence, not because of battle, but because no one dared to challenge them. The humans carried the weight of inevitability, and the whispers grew louder. "The giants of Earth are marching." On broken worlds still burning, survivors held their breath. Fathers told their children stories of the humans, of how they had once stood against impossible odds. Mothers whispered in caves, "Hold on, little one. The humans will come." They did not know if it was true, but hope is a dangerous fire, and it began to spread in the enemy fleet. Doubt began to flicker. Low-ranking officers muttered in hidden tones, "They are not like others, they fight until the last." One commander struck his soldier down for saying it, but even he could not erase the truth that settled like poison. The humans were not fighting for themselves. They were fighting because someone else had begged. And no empire could understand why a species would bleed for another. The galaxy itself seemed to lean in closer, waiting for the first shot, the first clash, the moment when whispers would turn into screams. The humans did not broadcast their intent. They did not make speeches or promises, but their silence was louder than any declaration, because silence meant they were already moving, already ready to strike. Whispers turned into warnings, warnings into fear, and fear into something the galaxy had not felt in a long time. The enemy began to prepare, their endless fleets gathering like storm clouds. But the humans were already there, closer than anyone thought. Their warships like shadows stretching across the stars, their cannons ready, their hearts steady, and still, across every world the same words spread, soft at first, then louder, like a tide rising. "They are coming. The humans are coming." The council's fear the galaxy was not silent anymore. The humans were moving, their fleet of black giants cutting through the void like shadows of war. Every planet, every station, every listening post knew it. And soon the whispers reached the highest halls of power, the councils of the great alien races in a chamber of silver and glass. The High Council gathered, their voices sharp and loud. The leaders of 10 species sat in a circle, their eyes glowing, their skins scaled, furred, or feathered, but all carried the same thing in their voices: fear. The signal of the dying world still echoed. Yet none of them had sent fleets. None of them had moved, but now the humans had, and the galaxy trembled. "They are fools," shouted one alien, his claws scraping the table. "The humans do not understand what they face. The enemy will crush them like insects." Another answered, his long neck bending low. "And yet they rise when none of us dared." Why? The question spread through the chamber like smoke, burning every mind with the same fire. Why had the humans answered? An old alien, her eyes blind but her voice strong, spoke slowly. "Because they are not like us. They bleed for others, even when it is not their war." Her words made the chamber fall into silence. Because every race remembered deep inside the times when humans had done the same before, standing where no one else would, fighting when all others had run. Fear turned to anger. One counselor slammed his hand and cried, "Then we must stop them. If they go to war, they will drag us all into the fire." Another rose, his voice trembling. "Stop them? How? Even our spies tell us the humans are united. Their fleets move as one. Their warships wake without orders, without hesitation." It was true, and everyone knew it. The humans were not asking permission. They were not seeking approval. They were already gone, across other councils. The same fear spread on a desert world. Alien kings argued in palaces built of stone. On a station orbiting twin suns, admirals cursed the humans for reckless courage. In every hall, in every chamber, the words were the same. If the humans rise, the galaxy will change forever. But the galaxy did not only fear the humans. They feared the enemy, the old empire that devoured stars. For ages, the enemy had been untouchable, endless fleets swallowing world after world. Every race had learned to bow, to hide, to beg for mercy. But now, for the first time, one species stood without fear, and that made every counselor shake. "They will die," hissed a counselor, his skin pale, his voice like ice. "And when they die, the enemy will come for us all." But another voice rose, sharp as lightning. "Or perhaps the humans will not die at all. Perhaps they will do what none of us dared." The chamber erupted into shouts, claws banging, wings flapping, tails striking the floor. Some demanded action, others demanded silence, but all of them carried the same storm inside. They did not know what the humans would do next, and that uncertainty was worse than fear. In the shadows of the chamber, spies whispered into hidden transmitters. Messages spread across the stars. The councils are divided. No one can stop them. The humans are already in motion, and far away. In the enemy's dark empire, the whispers reached cold ears. The enemy's lords laughed, their voices like broken glass. "Let the humans come. Let them bleed," they said, but deep inside, even they remembered old battles. Battles where humans had bled but never stopped. Back on Earth, no council met, no chamber gathered. The humans had already chosen, and choice was enough in the warships. Crews checked weapons, polished steel, loaded cannons. Pilots sealed helmets, engineers whispered prayers. And deep in the cores of the ships, AI voices murmured old commands. "Do not yield, do not retreat, do not forget." The council's fear grew heavier with each passing hour. Reports arrived of the human fleet drawing closer to the enemy lines. Scouts sent back images of black ships moving in silence, their weapons glowing like suns. One counselor stared at the reports and whispered what none dared say aloud. "If they succeed, if they win, then everything changes." Because victory would not only mean survival for the dying world, it would mean the galaxy could no longer hide behind fear. It would mean the humans had set a new law. When a call is made, it must be answered, and that law terrified them more than the enemy itself. For the councils had lived in silence, in submission, in careful shadows. But humans did not know silence. They only knew the sound of rising again and again. The council's fear was not just of war, it was of change, of the truth that echoed in every whisper across the stars. The humans had moved, and when humans move, the galaxy shifts, and no council, no law, no empire could stop it. First clash in the void. The humans had left the safety of their homeworld, their warships like black shadows drifting through the endless dark. The galaxy watched them with wide eyes, waiting for what would come next, and what came was fire. The enemy appeared without warning, their fleet blotting out the stars. Millions of cold, sharp shapes spread across the void, ships older than history itself. They moved with silence, like a tide of machines built only for death. They had destroyed countless species before, burning worlds until nothing remained. Now they came for the humans. On board the human flagship Iron Resolve, alarms screamed, screens filled with red lights, endless enemy signals flooding the map. The commander stood tall, his voice calm, his eyes steady. "They're here," he said. And the crew tightened their grips. Fear was present, yes, but under it burned something stronger. Resolve. The enemy fleet did not speak. They never spoke. They only acted. From their ships they released a storm of fire. Beams of white and red cutting through the void like knives. Asteroids shattered, dust clouds burned away. And space itself seemed to scream under the weight of the attack. The first human destroyer took the hit, its armor glowing white, then breaking apart. The crew fought until the last breath, their ship turning into a dying sun in the darkness. But before their light faded, they fired one final salvo. Missiles streaked across the stars, piercing into the enemy's lines, and the void erupted with fire. The clash had begun, cannons thundered. Though sound could not travel in space, the humans still felt it in their bones. Railguns spat molten steel. Lasers cut through enemy hulls. Torpedoes ripped ships into pieces. The humans fought not with fear, but with fury. Every death was answered with fire. Every wound with defiance. Alien watchers gasped from afar, their feeds showing the impossible. The humans did not retreat, even when outnumbered 100-1. They did not scatter. They formed walls of steel, their ships moving like a single living beast. The dreadnought Black Hammer led the charge, its cannons burning brighter than suns. Each shot tore holes through the enemy's endless swarm. The enemy pressed harder, waves upon waves crashing into human lines. Yet the humans held, their ships scarred, their crews bleeding. When one carrier fell, fighters poured out in a storm, pilots screaming vengeance as they threw themselves into the heart of the enemy. When one battleship burned, another slid into its place. Shields raised, guns blazing. The humans did not break formation. Not once inside the Iron Resolve. Silence ruled the bridge except for the voices of orders. Target left flank, fire. Shields at 60%, hold them steady. Every voice carried strain, but also iron. They all knew death was near, but none thought of retreat. The enemy had never faced this before. They had crushed species without effort, erased civilizations without pause, but here in the black void, they found something strange. They found resistance. They found a wall of flesh and steel that refused to fall. The first clash lasted hours, though to the crews it felt like eternity. Ships exploded, both human and enemy, their burning remains turning the void into a graveyard of fire. Still the humans pressed forward inch by inch, and every inch they gained was paid in blood. Alien spies sent messages back to their councils. The humans fight like no other. They do not surrender. They do not retreat. Counselors who once mocked humanity now sat in silence, because the feed showed something the galaxy had not seen in ages. The enemy bleeding. At last the enemy shifted, their endless formations breaking for the first time. They regrouped, pulling back slightly as if tasting something they had long forgotten. Not victory, not defeat, but hesitation. For the first time in 1,000 years, they were unsure on the bridge of the Iron Resolve. The commander stood in the dim glow of red lights, his ship scarred, his crew exhausted, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. "They've stepped back," whispered an officer. Unable to believe it, the commander only nodded, his voice low, steady. Then we stepped forward. The first clash in the void was not the end. It was only the beginning. The humans had shown the galaxy a truth written in blood and fire. Yes, they bled, yes, they burned, but still they stood, and in their standing, the enemy had felt something alien to them. They had felt fear. The galaxy trembled, for the whispers were no longer whispers. They were shouts echoing from world to world. The humans are fighting. The humans are holding. The humans will not yield, blood and steel. The first clash in the void ended, but the war did not stop. The enemy pulled back only to return again, wave after wave, endless as the night itself. And the humans stood in their path, broken yet unyielding, for the war had now become something deeper, something written in blood and steel. Human warships were scarred beyond recognition. The dreadnought Black Hammer drifted half in flames. Its armor torn, its guns cracked, but even in ruin, it fired one last shot that tore through 3 enemy ships. The crew cheered through smoke and fire, because victory was not measured in survival. It was measured in defiance. On board the carrier Morning Star, fires spread across the hangar. Pilots climbed into their burning fighters, their suits melting, their hands shaking, but they still launched into the black, screaming across comms, "For Earth!" For those who called us. Their fighters burned like falling meteors, cutting into the enemy swarm, exploding one after another. They knew they would not return, but they did not care. Because humans never counted their lives the way others did. The enemy answered with cold precision. More ships poured into the void, their beams cutting entire destroyers in half. One by one, human ships fell silent, their lights flickering out like dying stars. But every fall was followed by vengeance. Every death carved a wound into the enemy fleet. From across the galaxy, watchers trembled as the reports came. The humans were losing ships, yes, but the enemy was losing too. Losing in ways no one believed possible. For every 100 humans that died, 1,000 enemy machines shattered. For every fleet broken, another human fleet arrived, rising from the dark like reinforcements born of rage. On the flagship Iron Resolve, the commander stood in the smoke-filled bridge. The ship shook under every strike. The glass cracked, the alarms never stopped. But he did not sit, he did not bend. He only whispered to himself, "Hold the line. Hold it just a little longer." His crew bled around him, some falling where they stood. Yet others took their place. No voice cried surrender. No one asked to turn back because to them, retreat was worse than death. The galaxy had never seen such a thing. Species who had bowed before the enemy for centuries could not believe what they saw. Humans fought with something no machine could crush, a will that grew stronger the more they bled. Every human death became a roar. Every scarred ship became a symbol. Even as their fleets burned, the humans pressed forward. Step by step, through the fire, through the endless storm. Through the void itself, the enemy began to falter. Their machines were perfect, their numbers endless. But perfection cracked against madness. The madness of humans who laughed through blood. The madness of crews singing as their ships burned. The madness of soldiers who threw themselves into impossible battles. Not for conquest, but because someone had begged for help. In the ruins of a burning alien city, survivors watched the skies. They saw human ships arrive, scarred and broken, but still firing. Tears ran down alien faces as they realized the impossible was true. The humans had come for them, not for glory, not for power, but for them, and that truth spread faster than the war itself. Alien councils fell silent as more reports arrived. The humans had forced the enemy back from 3 systems. The humans had saved cities thought lost. The humans had held the line where no one else dared. And all of it was written in blood and steel. On the Iron Resolve, the commander received the latest report. Half the fleet was gone, most ships crippled. But the enemy had retreated again, their lines broken, their pride wounded. He stood among the wreckage of his bridge, his voice steady as he gave the order. Prepare for the next wave, because there would always be a next wave. The enemy was endless. The war was far from over. But humans had proven something that night, something that echoed across the stars. They could bleed, they could burn, they could lose everything, and still they would not fall. The war was not just steel and fire anymore. It was a war of will, and in that war the humans had no equal. The galaxy whispered the words again, louder than ever before. They bleed, but they never yield, and in every whisper, in every trembling voice, hope began to grow. Because if the humans could stand against the endless swarm, then maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could rise too. The last transmission, the void was silent, but only for a breath. The enemy had fallen back once more. Their fleets shattered and scattered, but everyone knew they would return. The humans stood in the wreckage of stars. Their ships broken, their crews bloodied, yet their eyes still turned forward, for the war was not over. It would never be over until the galaxy itself changed. On the flagship Iron Resolve, smoke filled the halls. Wounded crew lay on the floor and sparks rained from broken wires. The commander stood at the center, his uniform torn, blood on his face, but his voice strong. He looked at the survivors around him and spoke the words that would echo through the galaxy. "We are still here," he said, calm and steady, "and we do not yield." Those words were carried across every ship. Across every fleet they became a transmission, not only to the humans but to the galaxy itself. Signals bounced from relay to relay, spreading faster than light, faster than fear, and soon the message was heard on every world. In every council hall, in every broken city, alien survivors who thought all hope was lost heard it. Families hiding in caves lifted their heads. Children in ruins repeated the words with trembling voices. "We are still here. We do not yield." Even the enemy heard it. Their commanders stared at the intercepted signal, their cold eyes narrowing. They had crushed countless species, silenced countless cries. But this cry they could not silence, because it was not a plea, not a scream, it was a promise, and promises like that do not die. The human fleet drifted through the wreckage, ships torn open, carriers burning, destroyers nothing more than debris. But even in ruin, they looked alive. Lights still glowed, engines still hummed, cannons still pointed toward the void. As if the fleet itself refused to fall, reports flooded into alien councils. Half the human fleet destroyed, but the enemy had retreated. Entire systems saved, entire worlds defended, and all of it because humans refused to step back. The councils that once mocked humanity sat in silence now, for the last transmission had reached them too. We are still here, and we do not yield. On the bridge of the iron resolve, the commander watched the stars. He knew they were outnumbered. He knew the enemy would come again, but he also knew the truth that every soldier on his ship carried inside. Even if they all fell, even if Earth itself burned, the humans would not stop, because they had already shown the galaxy what it meant to fight. The last transmission became more than words. It became a fire spreading through the galaxy. Some species who had bowed for centuries began to rise. Small fleets that once hid in fear now turned their ships toward the enemy. For the humans had taught them something the enemy could never erase. That even in the face of endless darkness, one voice, one fleet, one stand could matter. The enemy regrouped, vast and endless, their machines spreading like a storm. But deep inside their cold cores a crack had begun. For the first time in countless years, they had been forced back, and not by numbers, not by power, but by will. The will of humans who fought not for themselves, but for strangers who had cried out. The galaxy trembled as the humans prepared again. Wounded crews rebuilt what they could. Engineers patched ships with bare hands. Pilots sharpened their blades, soldiers polished their rifles. They were tired, broken, bleeding, but they were smiling, because they knew what their last transmission meant. It meant the galaxy would never again be silent. When the next battle came, and it surely would, the humans would be there, not whole, not perfect, but standing, always standing, because that is what it meant to be human. And so the last transmission echoed forever. Through stars, through ruins, through every frightened heart, it became a legend, a warning, and a promise. Do not attack the humans. They will bleed, they will burn, they will break, but they will never yield.